So how have you guys been during the lockdown then?
Bored, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I've been working, finished uni now, apart from one exam, so just waiting on results really for myself.
Are you both doing finals then, or have you both done finals?
I have personally, I think Jordan's second year.
Yeah, I've just finished my second year. So
I'm stationary from this year, and then I've just sent my master's application off, so I'm waiting for that to come back. Results and everything. So
yeah, it's a really difficult time. My eldest is just doing his masters, and he's back from Durham at the moment. And you haven't got access to all the material you need, all your textbooks, all that kind of stuff. It's a really, really difficult time. And of course, you haven't got that university experience, which is what you went for, of doing other stuff with your mates.
Well, it's especially difficult with us. Obviously, I was meant to have my graduation ceremony next week.
Yeah.
It's been a bit of a letdown sort of end to the uni experience, really. But not a lot you can do about it at the end of the day. It's one of them things, isn't it? So.
Whereabouts are you at uni? Nottingham?
Yes, Nottingham Trent myself.
Nottingham Trent. What about Jordan? Are you Nottingham or Nottingham Trent?
Nottingham Uni of.
Oh, right. So there's no rivalry there at all.
Even better law as well. So.
Yeah. Well, I was at EME OTC for 2 tours as a company commander, and the amount of rivalry between Nottingham and Nottingham Trent, although my niece was at Nottingham Trent, got a very good business degree, and is now working in Australia with Hewlett Packard. So, swings and roundabouts. But I'm not going to get drawn into which is the better university, because they're both very good. So there you go. I won't be drawn on that one.
Yeah, I'll admit, I think the boat it's different now to where it was 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago.
You do still get them die-hard sort of students that are like, Trent's the best and screw uni off sort of people. But I think on the majority of people can recognise that they're both good unis. And
yeah, they are. And Nottingham Trent's had a huge sort of in terms of the infrastructure, huge uplift, and it seems to have expanded a lot. Certainly from when I first started going to Nottingham, when I was a captain with 4 Para in Triumph Road in Lenton, which is now 4 Para again. So that's how I got to know Nottingham, and then I was at the OTC as a company commander. So it's really, really good. Both universities and the city itself. And as you know, I've moved to Nottinghamshire Police from Leicestershire for a bit of a change. And I genuinely think Nottingham and the county, the city and the county, are great places. If you look at the infrastructure builds in the city now, when they're all done, it'll be absolutely fantastic. And it's a good night out as well, allegedly, so I'm told.
I've got no evidence to support that whatsoever. But,
either, to be honest.
Yeah, don't know what you're on about, sir.
Right. So, how do you want to do the sort of structure from now then?
Well, I'll just introduce it then to everyone listening. So, for those who've been watching, you'll know that my name is Lieutenant Emery, and I'm with my co-host Sergeant Shellard. This is the Inspiring Achievement podcast. We're joined by a very, very special guest today, our boss, the Commandant of Nottinghamshire ACF,
Col Southall.
And we're going to talk today a bit about his career, his time in the ACF, or his time in the Army, his time in the police, his time in the ACF. We're just going to have a conversation a bit about cadets and hopefully answer some of your cadet questions. So, shall we start then, sir, by going, we've touched a bit about your time in the ACF or your time in the military, but can you just give us a bit of a brief outline of your career going forward?
Okay, so just starting again, we had an initial take there. Introductions. I'm Col Southall. I'm the Commandant of Notts ACF, and Jordan and Ben have asked me to talk a bit about my what I've done in the cadets and my kind of military journey. So, going back into the depths of time, I joined the CCF, Combined Cadet Force, and I was in the Army section from 1981 for a year with the Worcestershire and Sherwood Foresters, now the Mercians, as you'll know, in B Company. I then joined the Marine Cadets, and I was a Marine Cadet until 1985. I think I was a WA2 when I left school. And I went to camps at Gaelic Head in Scotland with the Marines, Penhale, and weekends with the Royal Marine Reserve in Bristol, which we're attached to as cadets, which is really, really good stuff. We also did loads of field days at Commander Training Centre at Livingston and had a chance to do the Tarzan course and Commander course and stuff like that. So I had a really, really varied kind of best part of 5 years with the cadets. And as a result of that, I managed to get the opportunity to do 3 winter mountaineering sessions in the Cairngorms with the cadets. And I also did 2 summers alpine climbing in the Swiss Alps, again with the cadets, before 1985 when I left school. So the plan was to join the Marines in 85. I did that interview at the Admiralty Interview Board, passed that, and then it was suggested I go to university, which I had no intent to do, but I did. And I dropped out of uni. It wasn't really for me at the time, didn't finish my degree, and enlisted into the Light Infantry as a private soldier in 1987, going to the Light Division Depot, which is at Winchester at the time. I then passed out from there, did my regular commissions board, now the Army Officers Selection Board at Westbury in 1988, spent a year at Sandhurst, and then joined the 2nd Battalion, the Light Infantry, current iteration being the Rifles, in December 1989. So that's a very brief kind of history of my time in the cadets and where it led to with the regular army. Any questions so far?
Well, I was just going to highlight. So, went from the Marine cadets, and I'm sure we'll come on to this in a second when we start talking about your time in the reserves and the Parachute Regiment. But what allured you to the Marine cadets over the Army cadets?
Time that there are a lot more opportunities, and because we were attached to the Royal Marine Reserve, and we had field days and the Royal Marine Cadet Training Team were really good. It just had a few more opportunities at the time. So that was really what attracted me to the Marine Cadets, as opposed to the Army section, which I did probably about just under a year with.
I think that's probably still quite similar now when people start looking at why they want to join certain youth organisations. They look at the opportunities. So it's interesting to see how that kind of stemmed back, and that's how it affected your career in the cadet. Yeah. So why commission? That's a question. Why did you decide to commission?
That went right back to really, I suppose, from the age of probably before. Well before 13, I always fancied joining Marines and joining the military. And because I was doing O-levels as they were at the time, GCSEs, as you know now, and A-levels, it was like a natural progression with those qualifications. That allowed me to apply for a commission. So it was just kind of a natural consequence of what I was doing at school. Had I left school at 16, it may have been different, but because I did A-levels and got the grace to go to university, it was like a natural kind of progression.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that it really appealed to me in terms of a job, and at the time the advertising recruiting was pretty good, as it is now, and it just looked like a really, really good opportunity to do something different rather a 9-to-5 desk job. So that's really why I chose to get down the commissioning route.
That's cool. That's really interesting the way, though. Kind of for myself, I always envisaged myself joining the army, and unfortunately, due to medical reasons, I can't. And I think I have kind of similar outlook on life as you, doing my A-levels and then going on to a degree. I think commissioning was always going to be. I always wanted to join the army as an officer, so it's interesting, those parallels. So we've touched on a bit about you joining the army, and we got to the start. Could you tell us a bit about your time as a young officer in what is now the Rifles?
Yeah, I was posted to LI, 2nd Battalion Light Infantry in Tidworth, after doing 3-4 months of the Platoon Command's battle course at Warminster. Very quickly, I was deployed straight to South Armagh as a platoon commander on what was called Op Banner, dealing the troubles in Northern Ireland at the time. I spent three months in South Armagh, a place called Crossmaglen, which was interesting, and then East Tyrone, a short deployment there. So that was my first experience as a platoon commander. I was posted to 3LI, 3rd Battalion, the Light Infantry in Paderborn in Germany. Fantastic location. once I got over the fact that my girlfriend was at home and I was in Germany, and once you got over that, it was really, really good. We then deployed for another tour in West Belfast, Op Banner, in 1991, which was quite a 7 months in the end for me. That was quite a long tour. Good fun would be the wrong way to describe it. It was professionally very rewarding. I had a superb platoon, some really, really good NCOs, and my guys were superb as well. So that was kind of from Germany, came back and I went off to do my gunnery course as a warrior fighting vehicle gunnery officer. So I think I did about 13 weeks at Lulworth Cove, the Royal Armoured Corps Centre there. Bit of time at Bovington learning how to drive and fix warriors, and then went back to Germany and converted. We were converting to warrior at the time. This is just after Gulf War One, and I was the company second in command and the warrior gunnery officer and what they call the warrior captain, which is a great title. But actually, most of that time was spent sort of working in the sheds, bashing tracks and making sure the vehicles were up to speed. We converted to warrior, did all the gunnery trials with that. Again, the guys absolutely excelled themselves within the company and really impressed the small arms corps guy who came to see our gunnery and how we progressed from being infantry grunts to being, as well, in my opinion, as good as any armoured corps 30mm rod and cannon operators. So that was really, really great. I did totally 3 years in Germany, met my wife in Germany, girlfriend at the time, wife now, and then we came back to the UK for my last posting, and I ran the Army Youth Team in West Yorkshire, which was absolutely brilliant. I was being paid to deliver and conduct adventurous training for school children from 13 to 18 in West Yorkshire. And when we weren't doing that, we'd have team training, which would usually consist of a week's climbing, kayaking, and mountaineering in Wales with my team. So really, really varied career in the relatively short regular service, regular commission career in Light Infantry. And then, due to options for change, the first major defence cuts, I was a short service commission officer, and it was virtually impossible to go regular. So I reluctantly left the regular army in 1994 and then joined full para in the January of 95. So I had about a month off soldiering and joined full para, and the rest is history. Had an absolutely great time with full para, enjoyed my regular service. And then since 1995, I've worked predominantly with the police, although I had 4 years working in business prior to that. And I've been a reservist ever since 1995, which is, I've had some fantastic opportunities with the Army Reserve.
I don't know if Sergeant Shadow's got any questions that he wants to ask, but I've got a couple that's come to mind. So you started your military career as such in the Marine Cadets.
Yep.
Why the Parachute Regiment?
When I left the regular army, I was going to join the Light Infantry reserves, well, TA as it was at the time, and I looked around. I think it was 8th Battalion Light Infantry in Yorkshire, and I thought, let's go and look at something else potentially, because I'd been a armoured infantry officer predominantly. And 4 para was in Leeds and Pudsey. I was living in Wakefield. I went along for an open evening, and I was just really, really impressed. It was like walking into a regular unit in terms of the guys and everything else. So I decided that I'd do that, which I did. Transferred across. I did P Company. I did P Company twice. The first time I did it, and this is probably a lesson for the younger people out there, about resilience, is I did P Company in, it must have been February 1995. I was very fit back then. I had no problems covering the distances, but one of the events, the 10 miler, I got to about 9.5 miles and I was totally burnt out, and I got put in the wagon. And then I had to do, the annoying thing was I then had to do all the rest of the tests, which I passed on the 3.5 day, 4-day P Company. So officers have to pass all the events quite rightly. I went away, having failed P Company the first time, came back, didn't do any more training because I knew exactly what I'd done wrong. I hadn't drunk enough fluid, and piled in on the 10 miler. Went back and I got through no problems. Ironically enough, with the Mason brothers, I believe were on the same P Company. In fact, no, that's wrong. They were a P Company shortly after me when I was running recruits. So that's why I joined 4 Para. It was something different. The opportunity to do military parachuting, which is a whole different ball game from civilian sports parachuting. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. And I honestly say I've time with Parachute Regiment Reserve, as it's now called, 4 Para, and worked with some great people and been to some amazing places. In fact, I travelled more with the Army Reserve than I did with the regular Army. I had to turn down opportunities to go to Australia with 4 Para. I've been to the States twice with 4 Para. We were the first British military troops British military to parachute into Switzerland as well with 4 Para. Got the chance to jump at Arnhem on the memorial events there that they're held every year. And I was very, very fortunate to be privileged to be given the opportunity to command 4 Para's first sub-unit deployment since the Second World War in Iraq. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic opportunities that I've had with the Army Reserve and the regular Army, but particularly with the Army Reserve over the last 25 years. There you go, 26 years, I think it is, whatever.
I think that's really interesting because when you look back kind of like at media coverage and people's perception of the TA then, I think a lot has changed over the past 10, 15 years. So maybe some of our cadets won't really appreciate it, but especially a lot of people's perception of the TA, Territorial Army, back then was that it was more of a Saturday and Sunday club, whereas I think you've just shown that it is a really eventful organisation and really impactful and really important. Do you think that perception has started to change a lot now?
I think during what was known as Optelic and Opheric, which was the conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq, that totally changed the sort of outlook on the Army Reserves. As an ex-regular soldier, I remember some of my colleagues, and I may have been guilty myself, of talking about using that awful phrase, stabs and all the rest of that, really quite derogatory towards the Territorial Army. But my own experience in the regular Army was those reserve officers, TA officers, who came to work with the regular Army, and one in particular who was in my company. They were very, very professional. And the TA, as it was then, is like any organisation. You get the very good, the perfectly adequate, and the not so good. But I think what happened with the conflicts in Iraq, Gulf War I, Gulf War II, and then Afghanistan, was it professionalised the Army Reserve because people were asked to step up to the mark. My own take, whilst I'm probably accused of being biased, was I found 4 Para to be very professional when I joined them as a ex-regular officer, and they weren't the Saturday and Sunday club. Yes, they did play hard, but they were very professional, because they had the bar of P Company. You didn't just turn up, get given your maroon beret, and off you go. So I think the standing of the Army Reserve now it is transformed as a result of what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. At one stage, I think it was just under 20% of deployed forces, certainly in Iraq, from my experience, were Army Reserve. And we couldn't, I say we, the British Army, could not, or it would have been very difficult to sustain those long kind of expeditionary operations in Iraq and in Afghanistan without that 15 to 20% of reservists. Otherwise, regulars would be going round and round in a constant circle and reach burnout. So I think the Army Reserve is a different kettle of fish to what it was when I joined it, and only continues to improve. I think is probably the fairest way to say that. And I can say that because I've still got my foot in the reserve camp. I'm a staff officer at 7 Brigade, and will be taking on a new role there in September as a community engagement SO1. So I'll be working a lot closer again with the regular Army and Reserve forces, which make up a large part of what we call 7 Brigade within our area. So a long answer to that one.
No, it's much appreciated. If you could give a piece of advice to someone considering or is torn between joining the regulars or pursuing a civilian career and then joining the reserves as well, how would you help someone make that decision between the two?
Well, the first thing is to find out about as much information as you can. You've all the online resources, recruitment offices, and the recruiting process. Speak to people who are still serving, both reservists and regulars. Speak to people who've got previous regular service. And it's very much, I mean, it's difficult at your age, youngsters, I don't mean that in a patronising manner whatsoever, but from your sort of 19 to 21, 22, you're still finding out where you're going in life and the world. But the key is to ask as many questions of as many people as you can. Bottom line is the beauty, if you're looking at a non-commissioned career or commissioned career, you can go and find out, go and do 3 years service and find out. And I know certainly with commissioned service now, there's no such thing as what they call a regular commission. Everyone who does the Army Officer Selection Board will do that, reserve or regular, to the same standard. And you can then choose. The Army will have a chance to look at you in your first 3 years, and likewise you at the Army. And if you like what you see, or with any of the three forces, Army, Navy, or Air Force, you've got the chance to see what you like, because you may be a different person when you're 25 to what you were at 21. Intrinsically, you won't be massively different, but you do still change over that period of time. Likewise with the reserves, especially for cadets, if you're not sure about what you want to do when you age out from the cadets, especially with the contacts that we have now with 210 Regiment Royal Artillery, with 4 Mercian, with the Royal Lancers, with all those and Royal Yeomanry, all those relationships, you can go across and find out if you like it, do your basic training, all the rest of that. And then stay as a reservist if you're pursuing a civilian career, or if you think, hey, I really, really like this, I'm going to make the step to a regular commission or regular non-commissioned service. So there are so many opportunities to find out. Try before you buy, if you like. But my advice to everyone is don't be put off by that big kind of gap when you leave cadets, and especially the top of the tree. If you're a cadet sergeant or cadet sergeant major or cadet RSM, suddenly you're at the top of your tree, and then when you leave, you're going to be private so and so or second lieutenant so and so. I wouldn't worry about that. Just go, push yourself forward and go and have a go. And if you don't like it, and if you decide it's not for you, then you can leave both the regular army or the reserve army or the Army Reserve. But I think to sum it up for people considering those kind of careers, I'm 53 now. I would do it all again without a shadow of a doubt. Probably, with the knowledge I have now, I would probably make some wiser decisions than I did in the past, like we all do when we're younger. We do things where we think, actually, that probably wasn't a great thing to do. But that comes with experience. But there you go.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. The way to look at it, it's kind of, the reserves is a good taster for the regulars. I think as much as the ACF is an amazing organisation and it does lots for young people, and it gives individuals a taste of the military and a taste of the army, it is not the army. Whereas I think that kind of the way we look at the reserves is a more of a, not dip your toe in as such. But if you understand where I'm trying to go, it is a taster, more of a sample of what you can get full time. I think that's a good attitude to take. And then if you're also pursuing the civilian career, then stay in the reserves. I think it's a really good attitude to take. It's not necessarily a one or the other binary decision. I think that's really important. Before we wrap up the first part, could you just tell me a bit more about your time commanding Para, a believe, was it in Iraq, Optalic, in early...
Yeah, I try and condense what I did with 4 Para. I was OC recruits for 2 years. I was then the regimental signals officer, which consisted of being beasted by the commanding officer with large heavy radios, being the last out of the aircraft and the first on the ground because we were carrying so much kit. I then was OC Recce, which was fantastic. Did some time with Eastman's OTC. Promoted to major there, and then I returned to 4 Para as the company commander for 12 Company, which is now, I believe, B Company. I always get it wrong, in the north and northeast of England, so Yorkshire and the northeast, Tyneside, County Durham, around there. In 2005, I was approached by the CO commanding officer to see whether I was available, to go to Iraq as a company commander. Although actually that was a bit kind of irrelevant because we were compulsory mobilised, so it was one of those would you like to, but you're going anyway. That said, it was a huge privilege, and I've said this before to adults, to command, whether you're a Section 2 IC or whether you're a brigadier or a 4-star general, is an absolute, it's a privilege. It's not a right. And with that privilege goes huge responsibilities. So I was mobilised. We did about 2 months pre-deployment training with 4 Para. We then did the collective training with a thing called OPTAG, Operation Training Advisory Group, and then 122 of us, predominantly paratroopers, but with some attached arms from some of the other units in the brigade area at the time. Were deployed to a place called Shaiba, just outside Basra in MND Southeast, Multinational Division Southeast. And this was post-conflict, 2005, just coming up to the first elections. We were deployed to work with initially the Royal Irish as the reserve company. We were only supposed to do guard duties at the airbase. And when I say an airbase, it was enormous. It took me an hour and a half to drive around the perimeter at night. About 16 kilometres, and it was a hostile environment. So that was what our task was. But we trained for everything, including public order, patrols, all the rest of that stuff. So after our first iteration of doing 6 weeks on security of Shaiba Log Base, which was enormous, I really can't emphasise that enough. We then took on all the other rotations of the regular companies. So we were doing some work on guarding the divisional temporary detention facility. We also worked on patrols company, and we did the escorts duty, which was making sure that all the supplies from Kuwait could safely get up to what was an enormous, it was a main British log base in southern Iraq. So, and that wasn't just driving along in Land Rovers with some oil tankers. It was a lot more than that because of the high threat level out there. So that was, I was deployed, I was mobilised for 12 months. As I say, I had tremendous privilege to work with some great people. My soldiers, my NCOs, and my company officers really did excel themselves. And we were indistinguishable from our regular counterparts. And in fact, that's the feedback we received from OPTAG when they came out. The comment I seem to remember was that the only thing that sets you apart is your DZ flash, is black as opposed to maroon, blue, or green, 3 Para. And that was talking about all my soldiers. So that was a really interesting time. I never thought when I left the regular army I'd go on ops again, let alone command a company of Parachute Regiment soldiers. And it was a tremendous privilege. Extremely hard work, very long hours, especially at the start when we were taking over from another Army Reserve company, another TA company. It was a very interesting time, and put me off holidays, beach holidays for a long time with all the sand. But apart from that, the important thing was everyone came back. Everyone who went out came back intact. So we were very fortunate, and that wasn't the case for a lot of other soldiers that we saw coming through being repatriated at Shaiba Log Base. An interesting time. Even got to meet the Defence Secretary John Reid and Tony Blair when I was out there, which was quite interesting. Yeah, as I say, a great privilege to command men and women in operations, and one that I never thought I'd have again when I left the regular army in 1995. That was my time with Casino Company with 4 Para in Iraq.
It's really interesting, sir. Thank you for that. And what we're going to do now is take a quick break before we come back and discuss a bit more about what you're doing now in your day job and your role within the ACF. And then we'll take some break.
Okay.
So now we're back. Well, what we want to discuss with you, sir, is a bit more about your role as the Commandant of Notts ACF now, and a bit of what you're doing in your day job. So we discussed about your career in 4 Para and the reservists. Now, I'm correct that you part of Nottinghamshire Police Force?
Yeah, I spent 21 years with the Leicestershire Police, and recently, just before Christmas, decided that I wanted to move for more opportunity and something different. So I applied directly to join, to transfer to Notts Police. It's one of the major, obviously, forces in the East Midlands region, and in terms of how it's considered by other forces and Her Majesty's Inspector Constabularies HMIC, it's a good performing force, moving forward, lots of change, expanding. So I decided, having looked around all the regional forces, that I wanted to move to Notts, just across the border. And I applied in December, was interviewed, was accepted, transferred 10th of December. Spent 3 months initially working in the Bridewell as a custody inspector, covering Bridewell and also Mansfield custody. And then I did my Chief Inspector's Board in April, and I'm temporary Chief Inspector working the control room up at Mansfield. At the moment, we split control rooms because of the COVID-19 and for business continuity. So I would usually be working out of Sherwood Lodge, which is the police headquarters. So at the moment, I'm working as a control room chief inspector, tactical firearms commander, and I also work on the negotiators cadre as well.
Without going into too much specifics, obviously, for sensitivity of what you do, can you kind of give us a general outline of the work that you do?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to talk about it in general, because it's nothing that you can't see on the telly or on the internet. But I'm one of a group of chief inspectors who run Nottinghamshire Police operationally 24/7. So the control room is always manned, obviously, staffed, sorry, not manned, is always staffed 24/7. We have call handlers and we have dispatchers. So if you've dialed 999 or 101, or if you come via any other means of trying to contact Nottinghamshire Police, basically the staff, the call handlers will triage it. So if it's an emergency 999 and it is an emergency, then they will pass that job on to our controllers, our dispatchers, who cover the various operational areas of Nottinghamshire. And behind that, we've got a number of supervisors, team leaders who look after the staff, the chief inspector, and we also have sergeants who work in the control room. If we have a job that requires the police use of firearms, so when I say use of firearms, I don't mean actually firing them, but what I mean is if a job is deemed that we need armed officers to go to it because of the threat, risk and harm posed by individuals or the circumstances, then either it's using myself, the tactical firearms commander, will review that and decide that we need to send armed officers, or the initial tactical firearms officer, the sergeants, may well do that if I'm not available for any reason. So that's what we do in the control room, amongst a whole lot of other things as well. So basically, we're the we're in the role where we're giving operational oversight, direction, command and control to the response officers and all the other officers on duty in Nottinghamshire. And obviously, with the chain of command, we've got reporting to the superintendent, who runs the operational side of policing in Nottinghamshire. So it's never a dull day. No one day is ever the same. All the things you see on the news, I'll know about them as they're on the whole as they're happening and dealing with them in Nottinghamshire, and other stuff that affects us nationally, such as terrorist threats and any issues that affect us regionally, but on a national basis. So it's a fascinating job. Again, I'm very, very fortunate to work with some really, really good people who, it's not just a job, and I'm talking about police staff, and not just police officers, but police staff as well. People who are committed to making a positive difference. Not dissimilar to what we do in the cadets. We do it for lots of very complex reasons, but at the bottom it has to be that because I want to make a difference. Whether it's the cadets make a difference to young people and adults by giving them the chance to experience really positive and diverse things, or with the police, being there to help people when they need help in a whole different range of circumstances.
One thing that I was going to ask is, what initially attracted you to join the police force from coming out of the army as a regular soldier or a regular officer?
Yeah, I suppose a myriad of things really. I've never sought a conventional career. Lots of my friends from college and university went on to make huge amounts of money doing various things, and doing very, very different things. But for me, it's always been around, I wanted a job that was engaging, it was about people, and that wasn't monotonous. And I don't think you can really, of course, some things that you do in the armed forces or in the police can be monotonous. Like any job, you have things which aren't the most exciting, but actually when it's all happening and things are going on, it is really, really engaging, and you're working with people in difficult situations, either on the ground or even in a control room, dealing with real pressure, making real decisions which can affect people's lives quite literally. So for me, the police was, I left the regular army. I didn't know what I was going to do because I never really thought about it, because for me I was going to spend 30 years as a regular officer. That was the plan. But I did a whole lot of different jobs, worked in sales, worked in recruiting, and I really, it just wasn't, it didn't float my boat, flick the switch, whatever. So I thought, well, what's a job that's interesting, diverse, working with people, that has its moments, has its excitement, and it does. And it was either French Foreign Legion. I'm joking. It was either it was the police that really appealed to me, and I looked into it. I looked into West Mercia, which is where I'm from, the West Midlands, or into the police, West Yorkshire Police. But they said, come back in 2 years, you pass your fitness test. And I thought, well, that's no good. So I looked at Leicestershire, where my wife's family's from. And the rest is history. Spent 21 years with Leicestershire doing a whole different variety of jobs. Because people think about the police, your uniform, your CID, and that's it. Well, you couldn't be further from the truth. There are, I seem to remember, somewhere in the region of 70 to 80 different specialisations within the police service. Just within your own force, and then regionally you've got all kinds of other stuff, and nationally as well. So it's never a job where you can say, I'm bored, I think I'll do something else, because there's always something else to do, other opportunities within the police service. And the bottom line is you're working with people to a common goal, which is to protect the public and try and make the experience, the lives of people who live in, for me now it's Nottinghamshire and Nottingham, better and safer. It's as simple as that.
There seems to be very strong parallels between the role that you've done in the army, both in the regulars and reserves and the police. Do you think that your careers, because obviously you've been in the reserves whilst you've been a police officer, are they complemented very well? It would appear so.
Well, yes and no. An interesting observation was when I did I promoted to sergeant within, I think, within just over 3 years of joining the police. And then when I was applying for my initial inspectors, the irony was on the board, I didn't get through my first inspector's board, and it said I didn't give them enough examples of leadership. Well, I just come back from leading and commanding soldiers on operations in Iraq. So the answer is yes, it does, clearly, but it's like any job interview. You can't assume that people have A, read your CV, or B, know anything about you. So I think the lesson from that one is you need to make sure you do actually tell people what you have done. So yeah, broadly speaking, it certainly has. I think the regular and reserve career has complemented my police career. Certainly in terms of operational command, and be able to deal with some demanding circumstances, because you've always got experience to draw on, whether it's being shot at in Northern Ireland, having an IED go off, being mortared. Ironically, the only time I've been directly shot at was by the police in Northern Ireland. But I won't say more on that one, which was that was interesting. But yeah, the two very much do complement each other, and I think the common theme is it's all about people. And that's what I'd say to any of our cadets or adults, is it doesn't matter what you do, how smart you think you are or aren't, or what the situation you're in, it is almost exclusively all about people, because if they are usually at the heart of everything that we deal with. And sometimes we all make mistakes, everyone does, but if you forget that and lose sight of that, then it's not going to turn out well. But that doesn't mean you don't have to make difficult decisions which might adversely affect individuals' lives or careers. But it is all about people. I think that's some teamwork as well, which is what we're all about in the cadets. Is teamwork, people, developing people, giving people opportunities, and also actually pushing people beyond their comfort zone. Obviously, in the cadets we do that in a much more subtle way than the regular or the reserve forces. But don't forget, someone's own personal Everest may be climbing up Kinder Scout in the Peak Districts, or completing a 0 to 5K, as opposed to doing an ultra marathon or climbing Mount Everest. So it's all relevant to the individuals that you're looking at. So that's probably where the crossover is. Being people-centric and trying to do the right thing, and understanding that we're all different, and we sort of react to different circumstances differently.
There's a really, really interesting point there, that it's all about people, and kind of your perception is all about pushing and developing individuals. So my next question was going to be, why did you join the ACF? But it does seem kind of another natural progression as such. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, and it was kind of a thing that I said, because I got so much from and it doesn't matter whether it's CCF or ACF, Air Cadets, Sea Cadets, it doesn't matter. You have so many opportunities that you can take, and for me, it was, I'd always had a hankering that I was going to come back and give something back to what got me into all the things that I do now. I'm still an active kayaker. I'm still an active when I can. Hill walking, mountaineering, all that stuff. So I said I'd come back and try and put something back. And actually, I enjoy doing that. I enjoy coaching and instructing all those Commandant. I don't do an awful lot of that at the moment. But certainly, previously with Derbyshire and with delivery of venture training and as a Deputy Commandant Mill, it was a lot more hands-on. So you can do that. So that's why it's cadets, and I like to see people succeed. And that wonderful moment you get cadets or adults who think they can't, or whether that be on a 100-foot abseil at Nestcliff 2 years ago with Derbyshire, where we'd have been this summer, and you get cadets going, I can't, I'm scared of heights. It's 100 foot, and just sort of, right, off you go, step over, we've got you, off you go. And just seeing that I can do it, that result, or whether it be doing section attacks, or whether it be doing DV, doing things that people don't think that they could do, or the amount of cadets I have seen stand up and give a presentation to adults from major organisations, employees, and openly say, give a great delivery, a great kind of resume, what they've done with the cadets, and then finish with, and 5 years ago, I could not have done this. I never thought I'd be able to stand up from a shy 13, 14-year-old girl or boy to a 17-year-old girl, senior female or male cadet saying, and here I am, I'm talking in front of people, I'm very confident. So that's kind of what drew me to the cadets, was being able to pass on some of the experiences that I've had and to give young people and adults the opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise get, because I still think the cadets is one of the best kept secrets, and we're too shy about telling people how good we are. We're not about sort of developing the next generation of paratroopers or SAS troopers. We're not about that at all. We are a uniform youth organisation, and we give the people who join that, cadets or adult volunteers, the opportunity to be engaged in something really positive and to really develop themselves. And I think that's what's there not to like. So that's really kind of why I came back to the cadets and ended up in Nottinghamshire as the Commandant, which is another story. But I think it gives you, and you'll probably completely recognise this in yourselves. It does give you a tremendous sense of satisfaction at the end of an annual camp, when all the cadets go and they're all crying because they're not going to see each other for at least 2 days. Or not again, because again to university, whatever it may be, and then they've all gone. You get that moment of quiet in the company lines or at county headquarters on camp, and think that's really good. Do you know what? You can actually see those the cadets and the adults grow and develop even during the short period of the camp. So that's why I do it.
I completely agree with that. I'll let Sarah comment in a second, but I just wanted to bring back to an interesting story that you might not remember. So my last proper interaction as a cadet was my detachment inspection night at Col Southall detachment, which
yes,
inspected by none other than Col Southall. And I think you were talking about that the moment after, kind of when you reflect on it and you see kind of not just your own development, which was really interesting for me, but the most important thing was seeing that, not the people below you, but your teammates, your colleagues, your fellow cadets, see them develop and progress. And I remember just being really proud that night to kind of just see how everyone really performed really well, because there was a few complications, shall we say, before that night, but everyone pulled together, and I think we got a good report.
Yeah, you did, yeah. That's a small world. There you go.
Very small world.
The point that I was going to bring up is, I think if you ask anyone that's been through the ACF, CCF, whichever cadet force, and they come back as an adult instructor, they've probably got a similar sentiment of they've got so much out of the organisation as through their teenage years that they want to come back. I know for a fact that's why I joined back as an adult volunteer. I think Jordan's the same. And like you say, I personally credit the organisation coming through it as a teenager as to my confidence and where I've got to in my life today. Like, that public speaking example is one that I personally resonate with, because at a 12, 13-year-old shy, I wouldn't say boo to a goose, I think is the saying, but coming out at 17, 18 years old and being able to stand up in front of a group of people and deliver a confident presentation was something that I really saw growth in myself, and I think is very important for people to recognise that that's possible.
Yeah, I think it's what's really pertinent. As I say, I worked as a cuss inspector for 3 months at Bridewell, and seeing some of the young people who, the same age as our cadets, who were just starting to be involved in crime and some quite serious stuff, and you just think, it could have been so different. And it's not because they're bad lads or bad girls initially, it's just they didn't have, for whatever reason, those opportunities, the positive role model, the teacher at school, the CFAV adult instructor, the coach in the sports team, the family member. They didn't have that positive kind of engagement and role model. And I've seen a lot of cadets in knots. I can think of one particular individual who clearly didn't like school, had a real issue. He'd injured his hand because I think he'd bashing against the wall because he was so angry at school. But yeah, he was, because he didn't like conventional education and all the rest of that. But yeah, he was at the weekend because he loved it. He loved the cadets, and it was no problem at all. You know, the difference that you get with young people, and young people haven't intrinsically changed. I know that there are some changes, but being a teenager is just as complex as it ever was. But it's nothing new. But just to have those diversions and the positive role models and the opportunities that kids can get, young people can get with the cadets, is phenomenal. I mean, I'd love to see the expansion of Notts ACF into over 1,000 cadets and all the rest of that, and 200 to 300 CFAVs. But it's getting the word out there so people can have the opportunity that you guys have had, cadets have before COVID-19, and to a certain extent, limited extent, while this is going on. But afterwards, when we return to some kind of new normality as well, I just think it's a phenomenal organisation, and it can make a huge difference. And it's also really good fun, because if it's not good fun, then people won't be involved in it.
I think you brought up some really interesting points. The fact that the ACF does seem to be, as you said, the UK's best kept secret, that we sometimes struggle not to publicise, to publicise ourselves, I guess. I think that's something that both myself and Sergeant Shellard are very passionate about, trying to publicise the ACF and kind of change perceptions. But I still think there is a lingering perception there that, if you're part of the ACF or part of the ATC or the CCF, you're going to join the military. Both Sergeant Shellard and I are complete examples of you don't have to. And I think there's a negative kind of connotation associated with that. Not necessarily cadets in itself, but the idea that you've got to join the military afterwards. I think what we're really passionate about doing is trying to change that perception. So we run our Instagram page, and we're trying to do podcasts like this. We are to reach out and change that perception. How best do you think, from your position and your experience, that we can do that?
Well, I think this comes back to, you have to be totally transparent. The ACF Charter is quite clear on that. I mean, essentially, yes, is to educate people as to the Army and the armed forces, and those who are interested, who've shown an interest in joining, encourage them. But actually, nowhere, and we need to be quite clear in this, does it say that the ACF is a recruiting tool for the military. Now, a lot of people believe that we are, and I think the only way to dispel that myth is to be transparent, get out there and tell people, social media, face-to-face. Certainly in my role in the Army Reserve, on the other side of the fence, if you like, as community engagements officer, I will be pushing the cadet side and saying, look, it's not about joining the military. It's not about trying to recruit people whatsoever. I think it's just about being transparent. But I think the real selling point is, if I look at all the people who I've interviewed to become police officers over the years, and I can only talk from the police perspective, but those who were ex-cadets, and there was no bias, conscious or unconscious, in terms of dealing with them, on the whole, the vast majority of those really stood out. They had the confidence, they had the experience that you don't expect most people at 18, 19 to have. And these are people who weren't necessarily, who would join the police direct and weren't going to go to university, although they're doing the graduate scheme now. And they stood out. And it was simply because they'd had that exposure to the cadets, where you pushed outside your comfort zone a little bit, when you're part of a team, but to be part of that team, you actually had to play along with the team as well. So be a team member rather than being on the periphery. So I think we just have to be utterly transparent with people who think that it's a recruiting tool for the military. It's not. There's a very subtle difference between educating and encouraging those with an interest in joining the military and recruiting. But there is a very distinct difference. It's a slight, it's a nuance, but it's quite clear that we're not a recruiting tool. And I think, just to reiterate, I think we just have to be transparent with people, as you say, social media, interactions, all the rest of that, and be open about it.
I do think that perception won't change overnight. I know even myself joining cadets at 12, like 12 years ago now, there was that perception then, and although it's less so now, it's still there. So it is, I would say it is changing in a positive way. However, there is still work to do to push the fact that it is an excellent organisation, and there is no conscription, let's say, into the army afterwards. It is, for lack of a better word that I can think of off the top of my head, but there is no sort of requirement to join afterwards. It's purely an organisation and can set you up excellently for later life, in my opinion. So.
Absolutely.
So, Carol, sir?
No, I was just agreeing with what Ben said. It is a phenomenal organisation which can do an awful lot for your future career, whatever that may be. And if you've got it on your CV, the fact that you're doing that and you're on the voluntary basis of it as well really does stand out on people's CVs. Because as interviewers, so I worked as a recruitment consultant for about 1.5 years, and I've interviewed lots of people for jobs since. We are looking for that a little bit extra. So the fact that you've got a first and a master's in X subject, but you've done nothing else, and if you interview someone who may not have a degree or has a degree or whatever, but they've got all this whole load of stuff, and you look at the CV and you go, crikey, tell me about that. Oh, so clearly you're a team player, and it opens up all those kind of things that, depending on the job, but most jobs do require that side of things. It actually shows the fact that you are a team player, you're proactive, you've done a bit more than most people, and that you're a volunteer and that you're involved with developing young people. I mean, that's a fantastic accolade to have on your CV. So, what's there not to like?
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. As I said earlier, both Ben and I are looking to pursue careers in law, which is a polar opposite to the army. And every interview that I've ever had, it's always come up, and it's always been the big hit point, the focus point of the conversation, really. And it's really, as you say, it demonstrates universal skills, really, that apply to every career. Well, 99.99% of careers. And it's those skills that we want. And I think that's kind of the thing that we need to get across to our cadets as well. And I think we've been trying to do this more in this virtual ACF, because it is difficult to teach the military skills without face-to-face interactions. So we are trying to focus on the skills and the values that come along with it, rather than the practical, the superficial skills, so the military style tactics, etc. It's the leadership, the resilience, the grit, the determination. There's no law firm cares that I can do a section attack. What they will care about is the fact if a deal goes wrong, I'm not going to be put off by that. I've got that resilience, that determination to carry on and kind of be able to pivot and be ingenious and creative. I think that's the kind of things that we need to get across to our cadets. And I think more we do that, I think that easier to recruit other people. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I go on to add that if you look at the ethos, the whole values-based leadership and procedurals, I think that's second to none. I genuinely do, and I'm not saying that because it's what we're told is important. I really do buy into that, and if you can demonstrate that to a potential employer, you can talk about courage, discipline, respect for others. The whole procedurals piece. That is a really powerful thing to refer to, and the fact that you've been part of an organisation which is just a bit more than a commercial organisation, which is actually ethical and takes that seriously, values and standards, plus the fact you can turn up on time and you can look smart. Now, fundamentally, that is, we all know for an interview, it doesn't matter how old you are, if you rock up on time, you're smart and polite and confident, guess who's probably going to get the job, as opposed to someone who turns up with their hands in their pockets late and looks like a bag of spuds. So it's a bit of a no-brainer.
One final question before we take some questions from cadets. What's the hardest thing about being the Commandant of Nottinghamshire ACF?
I think it's probably time, being time poor and demand rich. So it's like any job. You could almost make it a full-time job if you wanted to, but actually that isn't the role of the Commandant. because I've got a very good regular team, the CEO, the QM, and everyone else at county headquarters and around the companies. But I think it's time, because of my obviously family and my job as opposed to my cadet job or reserve job. The biggest challenge is time as the commandant. There's a whole load of other challenges which we could be here sort of 10 hours later that I could talk you through, but it's actually finding quality time to spend on planning, and also with all of the staff. That's probably what I say is the biggest challenge for me.
That's it, and it's important to kind of recognise something that I am poor at is recognising that other people have a lot of things going on at all time, and it's not all cadets. I think that's something, as I say, it's really interesting kind of to hear it from the horse's mouth that people are busy. It is actually really demanding. Well, not, I think that it can be, balancing it can be really demanding, but I'd like to think that the reward is worth it.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I would agree with you. It's that whole volunteer ethos. I mean, I think I've spent 10 whole 8-hour days planning an adventure training camp with Derbyshire, which never happened for various reasons. Actually, you don't get paid for that.
No.
But to take 40 or 50 young people away and give them exposure to proper adventurous training, phenomenal, and it's good fun as well. So it can be frustrating as a volunteer, and I know the amount of commitment our CFAVs give in terms of time is huge. So that's a challenge as well, because you can't expect to run the cadets as a Army Reserve unit where you've got a full battalion staff or a regular battalion, because it's not. And you have to remind yourself as Commandant that people only have X amount of time to give. So as long as it's compliant in terms of health and safety and the planning constrictions, sometimes you've got to go with what you've got. At the end of the day, as long as it's delivered safely on the ground, then that's okay. But it comes back to time. You could spend days, weeks, months planning for stuff which may not happen, or you may be frustrated in your attempts to do so.
Awesome. So we're just going to take another quick break, and then we're going to come back with some questions from our cadets. So getting the Commandant's opinions on some interesting topics. So welcome back then, everyone. For this last final session, we are going to ask the Commandant some of your questions. So the first question we've got is, where do you see the ACF in 5 years?
Okay, ACF, do you mean the ACF nationally or Nottinghamshire?
Both, if you like. Start nationally and then Nottinghamshire specifically, or the other way around?
Yeah, well, nationally, the vision has been for some time to grow the ACF with detachments being opened in schools under various programs. So I would hope nationally that the ACF continues to expand. We have historically, like all of the other cadet forces, there has been a drop-off pretty much over the last 5-10 years. What we've seen, certainly within NOTS, is, I think, looking at the figures I get, we've stabilised the drop. And what I'd like to see, both nationally and obviously for ourselves, would for us to actually expand and grow our cadet numbers and our adult numbers. The key to that, and this is both national and also local, is going to be the recruitment of CFAVs, so adult volunteers. I've said before, and people sort of misunderstood what I meant, that my priority is adult volunteers. And people say, well, does that mean that your priority isn't cadets, or they're not important? To the contrary, my rationale is that to grow and to give more cadets more opportunities, and to grow the cadet numbers, you need more adult volunteers. And it's a really big ask where you've got people with busy working and home lives, especially after COVID, not even after COVID, but with the COVID-19 issues, is trying to persuade people to give up their own time to do something that is on a volunteer basis. Okay, we have a volunteer allowance, but the majority of what we do, and rightly so, is done on a volunteer basis. So nationally, I'd like to see, I would hope that we grow as an organisation. Funding is always a challenge, and that's no great secret, especially after COVID-19, when hopefully we come out of this to some kind of new normality. So yeah, lots of changes in the syllabus coming through. I think the syllabus is probably is becoming more manageable ultimately. I think nationally as well, we'll see a lot more online resource. That's one positive that has of the current lockdown, is that the Cadet Resource Centre, cadets can now get accounts and sign up and do that. So we'll do a lot more, I think, resources online and stop reinventing the wheel. Why do you need to write a whole lesson plan for a section attack or whatever it may be, when millions have been done before and it should all be online? So that I hope will help us to deliver more training more easily. The easy question for me is at our own level, which is Nottinghamshire ACF, and I know where I want us to go. For those of you who have read that relatively light document, which is my directive, I'm quite clear. For 1920, and the 2021 directive will come out in the not too distant future, is recruiting, training, retaining CFAVs. That for me is the absolute priority. Without that, nothing else is going to happen. Values-based leadership, yeah, absolutely. I want Nottinghamshire ACF to be inclusive. I want to see, I'd like to see in my time, whether that's achievable or not in the remaining 3 approximate years that I have, is a parity 50% male and 50% female, both cadets and adult volunteers. I also want us to look like the communities that we work in. So wherever that may be, inner city Nottingham or rural locations in Nottinghamshire, we should look like the communities that we work in and where our cadets come from, our adults come from. So that's a challenge as well. And the only way we can do that is to be totally transparent and push out positive messaging, whereby people say, well, why wouldn't I want to be part of that organisation? As opposed to, you talk about the old image of the ACF and the kind of impression people have that it's just lots of kids getting shouted at, doing drill and running around with guns. Well, that isn't what I want it to be. I don't think we are, to be fair, but I want it to be a lot more inclusive. Call it diversity, call it what you like. I'd like us to look more like the actual communities of Nottinghamshire. So that's a big one for me. Hopefully, within my tenure, we'll move more towards that. I'd also like us to, you'll be aware about the Adventure Training Officer post that I've just picked up. Some may say that's just good because that's my bag and I like doing adventure training. Well, yes, some of that may be true, but the real truth is that adventurous training provides, and this is recognised in regular and reserve circles, that adventure training is used as a great tool for developing leadership, for exposing people to control dangers, to pushing people's experience and getting them out of the comfort zone, and just a really good positive opportunity for people, whether that be mountain biking in Sherwood Pines, climbing the Matterhorn, kayaking at Home Pierpoint, going down the Serpent's Tail on the River Dee at Llangollen in a car, whatever it may be. It's a phenomenal opportunity, and I don't think that we have realised that, through no one's fault, in the past. It takes a long time to develop that experience and our own instructors. So that's a really big thing that I want to see develop. Adventurous training and D&V sitting sort of side by side with that. So to that end, we've got a very good adventure training officer who is Cat Badge Para. I can assure you now that there's no
There's some bias somewhere there, sir.
It just happens that he is. You can blame Sergeant Major from D Squadron for that, for introducing me to him. But I think that's going to be really good. I want to see D of E take off. I want to see all the other stuff as well, the STEM side of the house, and those opportunities for cadets to take off as well. But it all comes back to having the right number and quality of CFAVs. We've got a good base at the moment, some good numbers and some great people, but I want to grow that. And smartest campaign, advertising campaigns in the world, the most effective one is face-to-face, a bit difficult at the moment, and word of mouth. So if you're a cadet and you go away at the weekend, you go to yardage chase, you have a fantastic weekend, and you come back to school on the Monday when we return to normality, and your mates are saying, "Oh, what did you do at the weekend?" "Oh, I was on the PlayStation, I was on the Xbox all weekend." "Oh, great. Nothing wrong with that. What did you do?" "Well, I did this, this, and this. I was at yardage chase, and it was flipping great." Well, that is a fantastic way to recruit. So more cadets means more opportunities, means more courses, more camps, and all the good stuff. So that's what I'd like to see us moving towards. I'd like to summarise: to grow the unit, grow our adult volunteers, grow our cadet numbers, and increase the diversity of the training that we deliver. And not just the green stuff, which we do very well, and it's bread and butter, and it's really, really critically important in the APC syllabus. But there's other sides of the house, adventurous training, DV, etc., that we really need to increase and up the game. And some great work's being done out there, but it needs to be coordinated from the centre. Hence why I've recruited an adventure training officer, and I still want to find a DV officer, somebody who can step up to that. Not necessarily full time. There could be a deck commander, etc. But someone that wants to do that, like we have done with the shooting officer role.
I think that leads perfectly into our first question from cadets. To be honest, the question was, will we do more AT? And I think you've pretty much answered.
Next question.
That.
No, go on. Sorry. Will we do more AT? Yes, we will. We should have by now run 2 adventurous training weekends. Both of them have been canned because of COVID-19. My intent, when we've got a new temporary TSA, W02 Phil Hayes from Derbyshire, due to the fact that W2 Jamie Muir is leaving the army now at the end of his service. So with Sergeant Major Hayes, my adventure training officer, and the both deputy commandants, I'll be looking at that. I've already tasked Captain Wright to look at, get his head around the organisation. A bit difficult when we can't parade, but I want him to look at, per the post that I put on Facebook, 4 weekends next year, 1 weekend per company. My experience with Derbyshire was the first weekend I ran, I had 17 cadets turned up out of 34 put their names to it. They all went away. The next weekend I ran, I had to turn people away because it's just great fun, as much fun for the instructors as well. So in short, yes, I also want to run an adventure training camp during the year, so probably 5 or 6 days at Holton or Capel Courig. With as many cadets as we can take. It won't be the size of an annual camp, but it will probably be 50, 60 cadets, where they do a whole week of adventurous training. So not just taster sessions, but they do a bit more. Plus the fact, further down the line, I want Captain Wright to look at expeditions. He's a very experienced expedition leader to wherever. So in short, yes, I want more AT, but to do that, I'm going to need CFAVs who have an interest or an inkling they might have an interest in the outdoor pursuits to go to CCAT, to go and get qualified. And yeah, it's almost like an extra hobby, but there's no reason why you shouldn't. So go and become a qualified mountain bike leader. Go and become a mountain leader. That takes quite a long time, but it's entirely achievable. Go and become a kayak instructor. Go and become a rock climbing instructor. Single pitch awards and rock climbing instructor awards, all that stuff. If you do that in Civvy Street, I've said this many times on Facebook, it would cost you a small fortune. I revalidated my British Canoe Union instructor qual as a power sport instructor last year. It cost me £40. That would have cost me £500 to £600 as a residential course. So I would have been by now, hopefully taking cadets out on a Wednesday evening on the River Trent, but we can't because of COVID. But that will come back. But my point being is I want people who've got an interest in it to step up and go and get the quals, and then we can start doing stuff on a parade night on the River Trent or on a climbing wall, whatever it may be. So it's just expanding the training experience for our cadets and for our adults as well. And it's great fun. So in short, yes, we will be doing more adventure training.
I would just like to add on as well that the CCAT, like you mentioned, is excellent for adult volunteers to go and get the qualifications, but it's just as open to our cadets as well to go away and do that AT.
Yeah.
For a lot less than they'd pay on Civvy Street, like you say. It's about
they will. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ben. They will pay £40 for a week's course. If they did that via school, just a course where they get experience of stuff, it would cost them more than that. If they did it via Classie Brennan, great centres, or Glenmore Lodge in Scotland, or any of the other providers, you're looking £600 to £1,000 a week. It's open to cadets. Cadets can also work towards national governing body instruction awards, whether that be British Canoe Union, the mountain leadership, climbing, whatever it may be. They can do that. So by the time they're 18 and they age out, they can actually be a qualified instructor, and then they can go and work in outdoor education centres, all the rest of that, or just go for a week and go ice climbing in Norway. You know, that is phenomenal. Opportunities, and I just don't think people understand how simple it is to get on these courses, how cheap they are, and what the experience they can actually have consists of. And that's where Chris Wright, I think he intends to come around and get out to companies and start pushing the message.
I think that's a really good point highlighting the AT. I know obviously you're extremely interested in it. I believe, as Ben and I are, we have an inkling into it, so we might be one of your newly qualified instructors someday. But I think it's really, really important to look at it kind of from giving access to our cadets. Innately, kind of outdoor pursuit activities are quite expensive, and depending on where cadets come from, they might not be able to do that by themselves. So I think the fact that a 45, I think it's £40 to £50 a week, depending on what course you do, at CCAT, you know, it gives you access to stuff that you wouldn't normally have by yourself. And again, and it's another way you'll stand out going on to future careers, university, go in life is another experience. And I think that's something we don't push, or not that we don't push, but something we could push better or push more. I think Captain Chris Wright obviously will play a large part in improving our AT facilities within NOBS.
Yeah.
So I've got an interesting question, because I've gone through a similar route recently. An adult volunteer has asked the question, what would you recommend to a Cadet Force adult volunteer who's considering commissioning?
Again, one of the answers to the earlier questions, ask as much about the process as you can. Speak to as many people who've been through it recently. Through the Cadet Commissioning Board. Make sure your chain of command knows. Come and have a chat with me. More than happy to do that. I've recently been to the Cadet Commissioning Board last year. I went down for a weekend, which is funny because walking back through those gates 30 years after I did mine as a fresh-faced schoolboy, or vaguely fresh-faced, was an experience. But speak to as many people as you can. And then, obviously, look at the post-process, which will be done regionally. They'll take you through that. And I would also suggest that in terms of, if you're looking at the process, ask for someone to mentor you. There's no issue with that. You're not being given. There's no secrets to give away about the Cadet Commissioning Board. But get probably a senior officer to mentor you, whether that be a company commander or a captain. Or even one of the deputy commandants or myself, more than happy to do that, because half of the challenge is the fear of failure. Because you're in your comfort zone, you're a really good SI SSI, SMI, or whatever, and suddenly you're faced with you've been at the top of the tree, possibly even RSM, and you think, crikey, I'm going out of my comfort zone here. There's actually nothing to worry about because everyone else is in the same boat. It's not a competition. AOSB, sorry, not AOSB, the Cadet Commissioning Board is not a competition. It's designed to see whether you, with training, have got what it takes to be a commissioned officer in the ACF. So the first start point is ask as many questions as you can. Come and speak to people. Come and get advice and support. Hang on a second. Sorry, yeah, I've just got... It's like all these Skype interviews, I've got someone outside. Yes, okay, so come back on track. Find out as much as you can, get a sponsor, and speak to the chain of command, and get you onto a post course, and then continue support throughout the process, because it is quite a long process, but it's well worth it. And then you'll come back as a commissioned officer with the various tasks that you'll be given as a commissioned officer within the ACF. Ask, find out as much as you can, and get support from the chain of command.
Yeah, I completely agree. For someone who's gone through it recently, having a lot of friends and people help guide you through it has been really useful. I think one thing I would add to that is just realistically reflect on what the role of an officer is. Once you've decided that, if you want that, go ahead for it. And as you say, it's not a test, it's just to see, it's a character assessment really, to see if you are the right individual. And I think most people are. People think they're looking for some kind of magic ability, and it's really not the case. So yeah, I completely concur with what you've said. I've kind of talked about it a bit before, but what is the best thing about cadets for you personally? When you put your uniform on, what do you look forward to about coming to Notts ACF?
I think you're quite right. I did answer that previously, but what I would say that the best thing about the ACF is, well, there's a whole load. It is seeing people achieve, whether it's cadets or adults, seeing people achieve, especially when they didn't think that they could. That is really, really rewarding. And I suppose closely behind that is working together with people from massively different, diverse backgrounds, home lives, experiences, jobs and employment, working together as part of a team to one common aim, which is delivering the cadet experience. Very, very, with a very, very close second to that is making sure our adults also enjoy the process as well. So, but I think it has to be, it is that feeling of when I reflect on camp last year, really good camp, and it was brilliantly delivered by every one of our CFAVs, not down to one person or one group of people. It was down to everybody, and then watching them all get on the coach, and that split second when it's all quiet, and you think that was great, that those people, the cadets and the adults, have had those opportunities and done some really cool stuff. So if you look at what we did at Winnie Hill, phenomenal, really, really good. And all of the other star holders, really, really good stuff. And for me to be able to go around in the evening with the DEPCOM or the RSM to see battery in the field, or B company or A company, wherever they are on the ranges, on their exercise, D squadron up on the area, and to see them in their basher areas in the hides, coming in platoon hides, and having a really good time. I mean, what's better than that? So, a bit of an expansive answer, but it's not a simple one to answer.
One other question that we've got down is, it might be a bit of a silly one given your history in the Parachute Regiment and such, but are you afraid of heights?
No. Yeah. I think it's more of a challenge for people who are. We talk about true bravery is actually overcoming fear. The first time you step out of an aircraft is a little bit concerning. I was a climber as a teenager, so I have a respect for heights, but I'm not afraid of heights. There's a healthy dose of fear the first time you do your first descent. The second's the worst because you know exactly what's coming. But actually, I think having a healthy fear of the unknown or what could go wrong, which is different to fear of heights, is always good because it stops you from becoming from switching off and becoming blasé, because that's when, with any activity, with any element of danger, is when accidents happen. The moment you don't have a little sort of bit of a healthy dose of trepidation, shall we say, not necessarily fear, is worrying. So I'm not afraid of heights, no, but I do. Last time I jumped, I think it was 2017. It's always good just to reflect that actually what you're doing is quite serious, and if it goes wrong, it's going to hurt. But at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to hurt you is the ground, so that's all you have to worry about.
I think that's quite was a quite interesting question, being a paratrooper. So, a really interesting question actually. One of our cadets wants to know: are we going to start adopting more of our regimental traditions? So I know that the Rifles have a really proud history. I'm sure so do the Mercians, the Lancers, Yeomanry is not one I'm forgetting. But yeah, we've all, as units in Notts ACF, we all have proud histories. Are we going to see a more of adoption of our affiliated unit traditions?
I see no reason why not. In terms of how you may or may not be familiar with the approach I take with things. Hopefully you wouldn't, because you've read the directive. But in terms of mission command, it's very much one for the two company commanders, one battery commander and one squadron commander. That's very much their business in terms of traditions and regimental history. So I would encourage that. So I don't have any specific plans around encouraging it further, but I'd be entirely open to that. You may or may not be aware that we are, that I am looking at rebadging or refocusing C Battery, Royal Artillery, and also D Squadron to become to all wear the Royal Lancers cap badge. That is still work in progress, which has kind of died ground to a halt during COVID because of other things going on. But in terms of regimental histories and moving forward and sort of taking on the various customs of affiliated units, I think that's only a positive. So yes, and I'd also like to see, in fact we've done quite a lot with this, I'd like to see more work with those affiliated cap badges, so the Royal Lancers with the Mercian Regiment, with the Rifles, and also the Royal Artillery 210 Regiment, 203 Regiment, 210 Battery, Royal Artillery. So I'm all for that because it just enriches the whole experience.
Final cadet question. In fact, it came from a cadet adult volunteer. Will you come on more A company camps so we can show you how it's done?
I try and get to all of the camps. If I'm not working, if I'm not on a night shift or a late shift, I always try and get to the camps anyway. So the answer is yes. Obviously, when we do start training again, which is still up in the air in terms of dates, but yes, I will. But I do just tend to come down, usually for an afternoon, possibly stay over, because I do also like to make sure the company commanders, the deck commanders, the officers and seniors all get the opportunity to do what they're best at, which is command. So it's a balance between the commandant being out and about, but also letting people get on with it. Because I know as a sub-unit commander, from my experiences, it's nice for the CA to come out, but you don't want him in your around in your hair all the time. You also need to get on. But I certainly do come out to weekends. I'll often pop up out of the undergrowth in the middle of nowhere because I tend not to go around with a big entourage. I like to see what they're actually doing rather than stuff being laid on for me. So in short, the answer is yes.
Awesome. Do you have any more questions, Sacha?
Well, no, I just thought for myself is with the whole regimental traditions and being open to adopting more sort of integration with those. the use of the bugle, especially for the rifles as such, and more so integration of music within the county and events, is that something that could be pushed forward or could be developed as such?
Well, the answer is yes. I was quite clear about the band with Major Greaves and everyone else involved in it. That is something I do support. Biased aside, of course, being a former light infantryman, I think it's absolutely superb, and it is something I'd support. I'd like to see a continuation of the trip out to Belgium, but also at any public events, having seen our band and bugles last year doing a mini beat the retreat was absolutely fantastic, and especially around remembrance as well. But it's something I'd like to see grow, and I would certainly support. And the band knows they have my support anyway. So if there's any ideas or ways that you're looking to grow that, or any additional equipment, what I'm saying is you should always ask. The answer may not be yes, it depends on finances, but I'll be very keen to support that. Because the band is an absolute, it's great fun. Music full stop is great fun. It doesn't matter whether you're playing the blooming triangle like Baldrick, or whether you're on a flute or on a whistle or whatever it is. It's great fun. It's also a very, very good advert for Notts Army Cadet Force, and it's something that we shouldn't shy away from. It's really good high profile stuff that we would have done this summer with the band had it not been for COVID-19. So yes, absolutely. You've got full support for the band, and I'd like to see it grow further.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Have you got anything else you'd like to add, sir, before I close it out?
I want just a few pieces. I've posted out the return to normality, the various stages. That's gone out, so you have everything that I have. The company commanders have that as well. We are trying to keep in touch, although with shifts, several of us work shifts. We're not managing every couple of weeks. But basically, the message still remains, do what you can. The priority for cadets and for adults is obviously yourself, your family, your work, your education, and then cadets if you have time to do anything online. When that changes, I will let people know as quickly as possible. I think we're looking at probably a 6 to 4 week red light warning order, if you like, before we start training, and that will not be straight back to detachments. It's covered in the stuff I put on Facebook. But for me, the priority will be when we are allowed to do face-to-face training. It will be initially around probably a few consolidated events with adults to get them back up to speed with skill at arms and all the rest of that stuff. I would expect all of the safeguarding to already be up to date, because that can be done online. But I want to get the adults together first, and then we can roll out whatever the new norm may look like. Because at the moment, we don't even know whether it's going to be, we're talking about 1 metre social distancing, but that's just government direction for other activities. We are still on lockdown, and that will not change until the schools go back, and it may be sometime afterwards. So what I'd say to everyone is keep safe, keep yourself sane, keep yourself fit, what you can. With the ACF, with Notts, whether it's you're a CFAV or you're a cadet, and then get ready for when we pop up at the end of this into the new normality. Some things will be different, clearly. My best guess is that until we have a vaccine, whether that happens at all, we're not going to be able to return to complete normality as we knew it previously or prior to the COVID-19 outbreak. But keep yourself busy, keep yourself safe, and look forward to when we do get some news on returning to some form of face-to-face training. It will change. We will all get together again, but we've just got to keep the faith in the meantime.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on, sir. I appreciate you giving me the time to ask or answer some of our questions. I hope cadets have got something out of it, learn a bit more about you, your opinions on the ACF. Same with our CFAFs. So thank you very much.
No problems. Thanks.